So I'm going to jump to a time where things started moving very fast for philosophy, and that's around the Renaissance. And the scientific revolution had a major impact on philosophy because suddenly man was at the center of everything rather than God. Things changed. People started thinking for themselves. People became more educated. The printing press was invented. People started reading the Bible themselves. It was translated. And then the scientific revolution happened. The ideas spread really fast thanks to the printing press. And it changed everything. Galileo and Copernicus, with their idea of a universe where the Earth is not at the center of the universe. So it's not a geocentric universe, but a heliocentric universe, which means that the sun is at the center, changed everything. It was a massive shock. It's really hard for us to understand. People thought they were the center of everything because God made them as the most important creature. That's what it says in Genesis. Man is the pinnacle of creation. And suddenly they're not. They're just one planet amongst millions of others, not at all in the center of the universe. People were traumatized. We don't realize what it was like. I think for us to feel the same kind of shock would be maybe aliens turning up and saying, "Hi, we created you," or something like that. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it was a big shock for everyone, and especially for thinkers. It wasn't overnight, obviously, but I like Pascal. He's not, I wouldn't say he's like one of the major philosophers of history, but I think he's great. And I love this quote because I think it really relates to that era. So he said, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces fills me with dread." And I think that quote is one of the most amazing quotes in philosophy for me because it really captures the essence of that time. Suddenly people became aware of infinity and the silence of the universe. There's nothing there. And that comes from a deeply religious man. So, but he still feels that fear, feels that weird dizziness you get when you think about infinity and the universe. That's a picture of a heliocentric universe with the sun in the center. But before Pascal was Descartes, who also, I think, shows the philosophy of the time very well. I think there's two things that make a great philosopher. The first one is to really understand what's going on at the time, to seize the moment and get it. And the second one, more importantly, is to ask questions that people are still wondering about hundreds of years later. And that's what's amazing about people like Plato or Descartes, is that they ask questions that we still haven't resolved. They are still hot questions. And that's completely amazing. That to be able to discuss ideas that are hundreds of years old without them being ridiculous is amazing. And what Descartes did is, it's very hard to sum up. I will do another video on this, but he really placed man at the center of everything by saying that you exist because you think. And not only that's the most important truth of all, it's the foundation of your knowledge. So you yourself are the foundation of your knowledge of the whole world. It's not God, it's you before anything else. But the most important part of you is your reason. And so everything's based on your reason. That's what you will understand the world from. And that's what the world comes from, in a way. He was also a deeply religious man, so don't think he was against the idea of God, but he really changed things. And then, because man became much more important, because that over-reliance on God was not there anymore, so we started relying on reason, started relying on human beings themselves. And there was a newfound confidence in man. Man is amazing. Man can invent things. Man can discover stuff. You know, with the scientific revolution, look what we can do. We can look at the stars. We can understand the universe. It was all completely new. It was the most exciting time. It was amazing. So soon after, people started thinking, well, hold on. If man is amazing, and if man is a rational being, and that's what man's worth comes from reason, then we're all able to reason, aren't we? So maybe we should be equal. Maybe people should be really at the center of society and politics as well. And we mean everyone. And that was also a big change. So some of these philosophers, social contract theorists, they started challenging the idea that, you know, God gives the power to the king, who then gives the power to people below, and it's like a whole pyramid system. Some of these philosophers say, no, it's not. We're all equal. We're all human beings. We all have reason. We all have rights. And so we need to reorganize society around that idea. And actually, the king is there because we want him to be. He's just lucky. I'm using the word man a lot, and I mean it, because really women at the time, they were not really yet seen as, you know, included in that whole equality. And we've got the worst offenders there. Locke, amazing philosopher, really liberal in so many ways, and yet horribly sexist. I mean, he tried to include women, and then he came up with the most hideous quotes. And the worst offender is Rousseau, bizarrely, who was a big egalitarian, and yet the most sexist man you can ever encounter. So we'll come back to this in another presentation. But when I say it was the era of man, it really was the era of man, male man, not so much woman yet. So that period was, we still live in the shadow of that period where there was that massive reliance on human being and reason, and aren't we amazing? Yes, human beings maybe are not that special because they are not created by God, or maybe they are not placed at the center of the universe. But we are amazing for other reasons. We are amazing because of reason, technology, science, all the things we're inventing. You know, there was the Industrial Revolution after that, and things changed so quickly at the time. There was a good reason to be overconfident and think we're just the coolest thing in the universe. But then things started to change slowly, started to shift. Kant is still a modern philosopher, but I think in a way he's also one of the most important philosophers of all times. But in a way he started asking questions that were pointing towards the postmodern era. He started, seeing that a lot of what we know is just from a human point of view, and that maybe we can't really access reality as it is. And, he started kind of doubting things in a way that was uncomfortable in many ways. It was traditional in some ways, but very revolutionary in others. And so we suddenly get all these troublemakers that really kick that idea of man. So man suddenly receives kicks in the teeth. And some of them are not really philosophers, but like Darwin. So Darwin comes up and says, hold on, man's amazing, yes, maybe, but man is just an animal. It's just evolved a bit further in some ways, but it's just an animal. Oh, and that to a man that was really on a pedestal, to human beings that thought they were just amazing, that was a kick in the teeth. And then second kick in the teeth, Marx say, well, most of you are exploited for a start, and you're a product of the society you live in. And most societies nowadays are completely messed up. You think you're free, but you're actually doing the will of the upper classes. you're not free. You're completely determined by society, by economy, by history. Second kick in the teeth, really. Nietzsche, where do I start? Nietzsche was also an amazing philosopher and one of those who can write. That's really important, I think. Sometimes philosophers get a lot of credit for their writing, and he's one of them. It is compelling reading, really. He was more of a nihilist, and he really influenced existentialists as well. He claimed that he's the one who said God is dead. He really changed those modern ideas and shifted the history of philosophy into postmodernism. He started really kicking everything and saying there's no absolute value, there's no absolute morality, and he really criticized all the values of modernity. We'll come back to him as well one day. Freud, again, not a philosopher, but again, another kick in man's teeth, saying not only man is an animal, not only is not free because of history and economics, not only his values are nonsense, really, but also we don't even know ourselves. Our self is not really what it seems at all. There's a whole subconscious mind there that makes you do things all the time, and you have no idea what it is, you have no idea what it contains, and you're just determining yourself without even being aware of it. So those four were troublemakers. I like them. And please notice the amazing beards and mustaches. Nietzsche, the most beautiful mustache in the history of philosophy. And I think those two are competing for best beard ever. And so that really gives birth to that postmodern era, where those modern ideas of reason, man, history, and all that are completely subversed, and that completely questioned and deconstructed, and we get this amazing philosophy, underrated sometimes, and we also get a strange split between what we call continental philosophy and analytic philosophy. So continentals, really German and French philosophers, with a few others as well, and analytic, there are a lot of British philosophers, the American tradition now, there are quite a few analytic philosophers, although there are some existentialists as well. And it's a strange split. I'll come back to that as well. I don't think it should be there at all. But anyway, so you get all the existentialists like Sartre. We're talking 20th century now. And then analytic philosophers, Russell, Wittgenstein, who really deconstructed philosophy and language and logic, and that's fantastic philosophy, amazing, genius. And existentialist, it was different. I also like it a lot. I think it's really interesting. We'll come back to this too. And I've put feminists there because, one, as you saw, there were not many women in the history of philosophy. And two, I really think their ideas can change philosophy and have changed philosophy a lot, but it's a very recent philosophy. But there are some feminist concepts. That's Simone de Beauvoir, who started writing in the 40s about feminism, that complete visionary. And that's Betty Friedan, 1960s feminist. Both really, really amazing women. And I think there are a lot of feminist concepts that are still really underrated in philosophy and that will change philosophy little by little. And hopefully philosophy will be about men and women and not just men. So there's a lot of branches that are now changing quickly, and there's still a lot of philosophy. Despite what people say, there's a lot of new stuff coming out. In ethics, there's a lot of amazing philosophy being written now. So there you go. That's very quick history of Western philosophy.